Welcome to SparkBizCast, the podcast about igniting your business spark, where we talk with business owners and experts in law, advertising, finance, and more to spark your innovative idea into a full-fledged enterprise. Welcome back, everyone, to SparkBizCast, the podcast about igniting your business spark. So today I have a very special guest, Shawn Khorrami. Shawn, thank you for joining us. He is
For having me.
thank you. So Shawn is a serial entrepreneur. He's founded many businesses, and he actually started his very first company in high school. And in addition to that, he is an alum from UCLA, having studied mathematics, economics, computer science, and he also has a law degree. And on top of that, he now works at his company ePlaybooks, helping other companies, businesses manage every aspect from operations, marketing and sales, finance, technology, all the way through to human resources. So, Shawn, again, welcome. Thank you for coming on today.
Anytime. Glad to be here.
Yes. So I wanted to start off. Can you give us a little bit of a background of how you started? What was your first company in high school, and how did you get to the path or where you're at today?
Yeah, it's funny because I was going to end up being a business owner or an entrepreneur, or whatever you want to call it, from before I knew what that was. And that's because my dad, I'm from Iran. When we were in Iran, my dad had a construction company that he started with a partner. And he sort of grew it, and it was a good sized construction company by the time we had to immigrate from Iran. He had some interesting projects, and he would take me to the office. He would even take me to some construction sites. Probably not the best thing to do these days, but back then he would take me to construction sites, and I was completely jazzed by it. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to start a construction company or take over his construction company. So that sort of was what was in my head before knowing what it is really to be a business owner or an entrepreneur or anything like that. My first effort in that regard came quite by accident. I was in high school. I wasn't by any means looking to, start a business or anything like that. I saw a problem. I saw a problem for someone who I cared about, my dad. My dad, when we moved over here, he was not able to get his construction company going in any real way. But he was able to get his hands on a couple of small income properties, and he was terrible at managing them. It kind of was a number of things. One, he looked at it as a sort of a construction project. You have to fix it up and do these things with it. And that was what was in his head when he obtained the property. And then the other was that he comes from a different background. At the time, he was, 50 years old. Over 50 years old. And so he has a different background. He's been dealing with a different economy, different population, different mindset. And it didn't translate so well in over here in managing a property. So he was struggling quite a bit with these
So
properties.
you
And I
got to
just said,
witness all of this, witness how his business was forming or not forming, and kind of take some lessons from that.
well, it was more I saw a problem, and I was trying to help him out. And I at the time um, was when personal computers were getting into homes, and so I came up with this really basic database program to help manage the property, and sort of categorize everything that needed to be done, uh, like all the different aspects of managing a property, and then putting things in order so that it can be, you can keep track of it, make sure you're doing it, sort of very basic type of database program, and then a system for doing it. Um, just observing all the things that I felt he was doing wrong and looking at other places where they were doing it right.
So you basically built a project management tool for your dad.
Yeah, property management
Amazing.
too. Yeah, so that's what I did, but then that ended up being something he said to me, "Oh, this is really good. I have this friend, and then I have this friend, and from there, other people wanted to use it because there were all, he's not unique in the problems he's having.
Sure.
He's not unique at the time. He was by no means unique in immigrating from Iran. There was a flood
Right.
of immigrants, right? And so there was this sudden flood of immigrants from the same place, from the same type of culture, the same mentality, which translated to
Right.
the very same problems, um, all at once, right? And
Right.
so
Right. This was in the
that was
70s,
something, huh?
70s, 80s, 1970s or
In
1980s?
the mid 80s.
Mid 80s. Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
father's from Iran too. So that's about the
Yeah.
same time he immigrated. You're right. There was a big wave around
Yeah.
that time after the Shah fell.
Yeah, so that was by chance that's what it was, and it was like, oh, my friend would could use this, and then the other one, I go to this one, and then but there's this guy that would actually really benefit from it, and so from there just became this business,
Ah, okay.
right? And this is something I tell people all the time. People, in some fashion, in my opinion, approach things differently than I think they should. They first look at, oh, how do I start a business, or how do I do this, or the first thing you need to look at is, you know is there a problem that I'm solving? Like, identify a problem, try
Yes.
to solve that problem, and then you can have a business that does that. But unless you're solving a problem, I feel like you're not really going about it the right way. If you're solving a problem, then there are people that have, and presumably you're solving a problem for a good number of people, that a problem that a good number of people have, then you have a market right there. That's your market. The people who have that problem, and then and you are solving that problem. And the next thing you have to do is tell them how your solution is the best solution to that problem. And therein is very simple. Marketing and sales, right?
Correct,
Marketing
correct.
is
And we had discussed these pain points because, as you had mentioned previously on a previous discussion, a lot of business owners don't understand what their customer base's pain point is. A lot of them don't understand the problem. So, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
it's
So,
more it's
identifying what that problem is and forming a business model around solving that pain point.
So very, very simple difference, and this a lot of times helps when I talk about it. The difference between marketing and sales, right? Difference between marketing and sales is, in a very, basic way, is marketing is about the customer, sales is about you. Okay? So marketing about the customer. What does the customer want? Customer doesn't want a problem, that doesn't want a product. They're not looking for to spend money necessarily. What they're doing is they have a problem and they're trying to solve it. Okay. And so you as the marketer, or the business owner, you're gonna have to be a marketer at some point. You have to identify those problems and then the people that have the problem, and then say, okay, here's the problem you're having. And here's the solution. And you offer them the solution. That's where you're selling them on your particular solution, right? How you're better than any other solution that they see out there. And that's why a lot of times what people do is they say, okay, well, I made let's say something that stops you from like sweating in a certain
Sure.
situation, right?
Mhm.
And they immediately think that their product, the product that they've made, is the thing that the customer is looking for. The customer is looking for a solution. So if you've made a clothing item that stops you from sweating, you're competing with other things that stop you from sweating. Right?
Ah,
You may be
right.
competing with antiperspirants. You may be competing. So there's other solutions to that problem. And
Correct.
so
Okay.
identifying exactly what the problem is you're solving, and what are you competing against,
Mhm.
what that process is for the consumer is incredibly important, in my opinion, that, that a lot of times gets overlooked.
So let's go back to that example. Let's say I have created a clothing item that deals with perspiring profusely. Now, in knowing that there are other products available in the market, such as antiperspirants and even Botox now to inject underarm, what would you recommend for a business trying to penetrate this market, to enter this market? What would you recommend for them to do to be able to sell a product, a clothing garment that assists with this sort of problem?
Well, I mean, you've identified the problem. You're going to have to say to the consumer why your solution is best, or why it's So you're going to have to come up with a whole list of things that differentiates you from your competition. But the first thing to do is identify who exactly your competition is. What
Right.
is your? It may be that antiperspirants are not competition. They may be. I don't know that.
Sure.
But discovering exactly what other solutions out there are my competition, whether it's just garments, or it's other things as well, is incredibly important. You'll be competing with garments as well, because people will want to wear certain things that make them perspire less. Maybe it's a cooler fabric, not necessarily stops you, but does the job for
Lessens
them,
it. Correct.
right? It fits
Correct.
their lifestyle.
Mhm.
So one is figuring out exactly what you're competing with. Two is
Market
figuring out
research, basically. Correct. Yep.
what lifestyles you fit into. So creating that sort of customer profile that you need, the person that's actually going to use your product or is going to be a good candidate, where they're going to make the decision to use your product over some of the other solutions that are out there.
Now, let me
Um,
ask you another question. So, a lot of the companies you work with, the business owners or the businesses, do they do this market research and really identify who their consumer base is before they go to market at all? Or do they go to market, realize there's a problem, and then come to you and try to figure out how to best target their demographic?
well, the okay, it's an interesting question. I think what I typically deal with is someone who's identified a problem and has a solution, or has a proposed solution to it, and then from there they can't figure out exactly what to do or how to get traction on it. The And this is very typical. This comes up because you'll have someone come to you and they'll say, "This happens to me virtually on a daily basis." They'll come and they say, "I have this thing that solves this problem. It's the best thing ever. I've patented it. This thing works better than all the other solutions that are out there. Blah 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 blah. I can't get anyone to buy it." And one of the things that you know, people sort of have to think through sometimes, and it helps,
Mhm.
is walking through all the best sellers of anything, any type of product in any industry, right? And really thinking out, is the best seller the very best product in that category?
Sure.
Usually it's not. Usually the best selling product is not the best solution, or the best made product.
Really?
Um, that's
Best
my opinion.
marketed,
Is
perhaps?
is 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 Coke the best tasting thing? And then
Uh,
what are the
Great example.
factors? What are the factors that you're considering? For one consumer, Coke is great because they like the way it tastes. For another consumer, they might like the color. Another consumer may like carbonation over flat, some flat drink. Another consumer may say that's the way I like to get my caffeine. I don't like drinking coffee. It gives me too much caffeine. Coke does it just right. So why a consumer? And by the way, I've done zero look at what people like about Coke. I'm
Fair enough.
sure Coke
Yes.
has done a whole lot on that.
Yes, they've done the market
So
research, and it goes back to what we had discussed. So, are these businesses, when they come to you, did they do that market research prior to getting in? Did they look at competitors? Did they look at competing products? Did they try to find out who the best products are in that category, the companies in that category, or are you recreating the wheel and going backwards when they come to you to try to determine what these products and companies are and why
It's all a
consumers?
spectrum. There's a whole gamut of it. Sometimes someone has identified a problem and they say, okay, here's my solution, and they've done nothing else.
Sure.
And
Okay.
they may or may not have a good solution. You sometimes you go, why would someone get that? And they don't have an answer. Because they haven't done that. Just sitting down and saying, what are all the different things that makes my solution better, right? Just make a
Yes.
list of it. They haven't done that. They sometimes have one thing. They for whatever reason, the problem presented itself to them, and it was based on one thing, and so they solved that one factor, and they say, okay, it's better because of this. But really, the product has a whole lot of advantages, a whole lot of them that they haven't even begun to think about, just because for them, as on the consumer side, when they saw the problem, it didn't, it just wasn't something that materialized. So they haven't gone through that process, sort of determining that.
So it
Um,
seems like as a new entrepreneur or business owner, you're trying to get into to launching a product or service in the marketplace. You really need to be doing this research in the beginning so that you have every tool you need to be successful. And then more importantly, we had talked about this, staying in your lane. So can you cover that a
yeah,
little bit as far as staying in that product category or in that vertical business line?
so there's a few things. I mean, look, if you're a billion-dollar company, I'm sure you do, the belts and suspenders way of seeing if a product is good enough to put out on the market. I'm sure if you're Apple, Apple has made a reputation for this. When they put out a product, they put it out when it's perfect, right? That's their whole thing. Once it's out, that's the best one of those that you'll find. That's the sort of the brand that they have. If you're a small business owner or some individual who's come up with something, there's limited resources. You don't necessarily have the ability to test every single thing and do market research and all these different things. So there's alternatives, and you kind of make do. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. What is important to do is knowing all the things that should get done, and figuring out how you do all of it, or the most of it, or the ones that you really need to get done now, and prioritizing those things to make sure that you're doing all those things. And even then, you're really, there's no guarantees in the world,
Yeah, we
so
had discussed this. A lot of so we had talked about social media, correct? And
yeah,
it,
but I mean, the age old, there's an old saying that says luck is when opportunity meets preparation meets opportunity, right? That opportunity may has to still present itself in some fashion. There's some things that you don't have any control. So that's what the point is, really, that you do all of these things to be prepared, to do everything you can do on your side to be successful at it. That doesn't mean it's going to happen. There are still outside forces that are not within your control, that have to go right. Stars have to line up still, but you're putting yourself in the best position possible in order to be successful.
correct.
That's the thing.
And let's go into marketing and advertising because we had discussed this a little bit in our last conversation that there's a lot of business owners now, especially with this day and age of social media, where they think their product's going to go viral or their face is going to go viral and they're going to be able to sell their products and services. But you had brought up a very interesting point, that of Kim Kardashian and the Skims brand. So yes, she has, I can't recall the exact number, but she has millions of followers, yet she is still buying Skims Google ads. She is still paying for Skims advertisements in Instagram. So can you talk a little bit about that? Why this having a big base of social media followers isn't necessarily going to be what automatically leads to sales?
Well, I mean, having a base is a base, right? That's what a base is. Now, how you leverage that, You mentioned Kim Kardashian. Again, I'm not hugely familiar with anything she does. I'm not one of the people that follow her. But I look at her as the ultimate influencer, right? That she's from what I can tell, was one of the first of the modern day influencers, right? Where
Right.
it came out from reality TV and then it was on social media.
And
Influencers have been around for
she's
decades.
she's
Um,
the one of the few who's very strategic businesswoman that has optimized and well monetized the fame that came to her. So she's built
um,
business brands out of it. And Skims, in case you didn't know, it's a clothing brand that she had built out of this. But like I had said, it's kind of interesting that even with that base, even with that audience, it still requires paying for ad dollars through Google Ads
yeah,
or Instagram.
yeah. So I mean, even influencers pay for advertising and do marketing in addition to posting on their own social media platforms or using their own social media platforms. It's one tool, it's not the only tool. And so a lot of times what happens is you get a new business owner who again in these situations there's limitations. You can only have resources to do so many things, right? And what I'm not a big fan of is if you have resources to take on one marketing, lane to
Sure, one
sort
avenue. So one source, just Instagram, for example, versus diversifying into Google Ads or billboards, whatever it may be, right?
right or
Focusing on one lane. Okay.
to then use that um, to fund an influencer campaign. I just don't, in my opinion, again, I don't think that's a business plan. I think that's a lottery ticket. And it may be successful, and I'm sure there are examples of where someone did
Sure.
that. I just don't think that's the situation where you're preparing yourself the best way you can to be successful. That's what I mean. So yes, I'm sure there's examples of someone who became successful, just using an influencer campaign,
Sure.
starting from there and then growing from there. But I bet you another thing, whoever did become successful doing that didn't remain successful without doing a whole lot of other things. It just from what I've seen isn't enough. And you brought up Kim Kardashian, the brand, the Skims brand. I'm sure people see advertisements for that brand all over
Yes.
the place. And
Yes.
if you see advertisements for that all over the place, that means that she is not using her social media, her social media account as the only way of marketing. Now, if
Right.
she's
She's
not, the
diversifying.
point I'm trying to make is this: if she's not using her social media account as the only form of marketing her own product, then why is that something that new business owners want to do? Use that as their only
Exactly.
marketing. And
Exactly.
so that's the thing, that the point that I'm trying to make. Not that it's a bad thing, is that if you see someone else that's the ultimate influencer using other things, not just her social media account, then why would you make the influencer thing your only form of
Exactly.
marketing?
Right, and it makes it if you use only social media as your only form of marketing, you're missing a bigger base that may not be on social media. So I believe what she's doing with Skims is trying to build household brand recognition, and you can't just do that solely focused on Instagram. And more importantly, you can't be bombarding your base with nothing but ads for Skims. They're there to watch you also. So there's this delicate balance, I think, also at play between just being a giant advertisement on your social media versus interspersing pieces of ads with pieces of your life. So I think you're right, but on that point, what are some of the other advertising avenues that may lead to higher conversion rates than using social media?
One thing I'll tell you this. I want to separate one thing. Influencer marketing versus social media. I wanted to separate that.
Sure.
Uh, in terms of influencer marketing, I don't find that to be a good single source or the beginning place for pushing a product. I find that to be just not enough to be a business plan. If someone wants to do that, I suppose they can do that. I don't think you know, I don't think that's the right way to go about it, especially on a very limited budget.
Right.
Um, in terms of social media, depending on what products you're selling, some of them may be good ones to start with and work on. If you're selling apparel, obviously you want to, Instagram is a very good place. So there's examples like that. But for me, what I like is at least having some place where I'm looking at customers directly, in addition to social media. And so, the way I look at a lot of social media channels is someone is on there, they're doing these other things.
Mhm.
And, yes, they do shop there. Obviously, lots of brands, are killing it on social media and they're getting a lot of sales out of it. So yes, it's a great place to market, but the person you're talking to isn't there solely for the purpose of shopping.
Correct.
They're there for a variety of reasons,
Yeah.
and you're picking up sales from there, and that's great. I like to also be someplace where people are there just to shop, like a marketplace, like an Amazon.
Sure.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, and so the reason I like that is that they're, the people you're dealing with are there to buy something. They may not buy what you're selling, but they're going to buy something. And so it's just a different type of a market. It's a different way to get sales. And I think as a small company, or one that's got relatively little exposure, one place to sort of get sales is over there. It's not the best place to build a brand. You want to build a brand, in other places, including your own website, including social media, including, various places you can go to. But um, the building a brand is more of a long-term process.
Yes.
You know, so I look at those things completely differently. And just because you haven't developed a brand yet, it shouldn't mean that you don't have any sales, or vice versa. So, I like some sort of a place where you actually have shoppers that are buying your goods. My
A
my
storefront
way,
of some sort.
yeah, and then my way of doing it also is, again, if you're looking at a limited budget, you can't be everywhere at once. You have a proliferation of sales channels. All of these different companies have figured out, especially social media companies have figured out that, the way that they're going to make money is by connecting businesses to consumers. And so they've built out all these different business tools in order to allow businesses to get customers, sell to customers. But at the same time, because there's this proliferation of these, with all these different choices, you need to be judicious about what exactly you're picking as, where am I going to go sell?
Right.
Understanding that I have limited marketing dollars, limited resources to manage all of these different channels. So you're going to have to take some smaller subset of them, and then based on your resources, work on selling your product
So if
and
I'm,
creating the brand.
let's say I own a cosmetic brand and I'm just getting started. I have a limited advertising budget. What would you recommend as the biggest bang for my buck in order to get conversions and sales of those products?
Well, I would do a combination of wholesaling and retailing. I would do both. So I would be trying to get into retail stores, have them, buy my product, wholesale, and sell it out to their customers. And then on the other side, I'd be selling. I'd probably put out something on TikTok. I may use Instagram. I would use certainly I would get on Amazon and see if I can get some traction there.
Sure.
Uh, I would be I would have a website. I don't know how much I would spend marketing my website
Okay, so you wouldn't do
upfront.
many Google ads up front. Not quite at that phase.
Probably not up front. I wouldn't.
Okay.
I would put up a nice website, but I would not necessarily go nuts blowing a budget on that side of it.
Mhm.
Uh, I would probably I would look at TikTok or Instagram as social media channels, and I would look at Amazon to sell on, and then I would also try to open up a wholesale, some sort of wholesale presence, getting
'Cause that's the
into.
fastest way. I've seen that work successfully for a lot of brands starting out is to directly attempt to get into retailers because as you said, it's more bang for your buck, and a lot of times it's just building the connection within Walmart or wherever the storefront is in order to get your products in there. So I wanted to, so we were talking about products, but I want to bring up services. So I've noticed there's a lot of these entrepreneurs on Instagram and social media, and at some point they had started a very successful business, and now they're selling courses or mastermind sessions or book a party at my in my yacht. I wanted to bring this up because it was kind of interesting. So, a few of these people have millions of followers, but they're still like I had mentioned before, they're still paying for Instagram advertising and they're selling these services that are not really services, but they're more of learn from me type of items. So what are your thoughts on this sort of business model? Is it sustainable in the long run? Is it something you would recommend people of who were former entrepreneurs to move into? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, that's their product. The product they're selling is, hey, I have all these tools you can use in order to be successful in whatever. So, they're essentially, it's, similar to selling courses, right?
Sure.
Or a lot of times it is exactly that. It is exactly selling courses. So, I mean, as a business model, like I suppose it's good. It makes money for them. In terms of what you're getting as the person, as the customer, I would be careful because um, I would want to know more nuts and bolts of business concepts and nuts and bolts of marketing and things like that, rather than a lot of gimmicky type things. Oh, look at this sales deck that the or whatever, this pitch deck that worked for X
Raised
entrepreneur
$40
now
million.
got a.
dollars. Yes, of course.
So, yes, those things are good to have there as a pitch deck that I suppose it worked. But just because it worked once doesn't mean it works again. And just because it worked 20 years ago for some company that was pitching investors then doesn't mean it works today. It a wholly different world today. And so a lot of those things, they're fun historical things to look at. They give you some information when you're looking at those things, but they don't always provide you with the best tools in order to be successful with whatever it is you're doing.
Right.
Um,
It
and
might not
so
be applicable for what you're doing.
yeah, so what I don't like doing is just, from a customer point of view, not
Sure.
not the person running their business, they're running their business, they have this product out and they're trying to sell it. And that's why they do advertisements and they say, come to my party and do this or buy this kind of course from me. I guarantee you, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff. They're selling a product. As the customer, there are so many of these products out there. Um, you know, I mean, I would be, if it were me, I would be much more interested in nuts and bolts of how things work, nuts and bolts of how accounting works, or at least getting some sort of a understanding of how that, how to read financials or create them. Those things have value. How to market, what exactly, marketing concepts, things that you can use in order to market a product, or how do you properly sell? Again, concepts, not how somebody did it that became
Right.
famous.
And that's the gimmick. Want to see how I became a multi-million dollar entrepreneur? No, I want to see how to do a spreadsheet.
Yeah, well, or
Not,
what exactly,
it's not
I
exactly sexy stuff to learn, but it's the most important aspect of running a business.
and historical things are good, how you go from point A to point B. There are lessons to be learned in there. But I just would, if it were me, I'd be after concepts. Uh,
Educational concepts on operating a business, basically, in a nutshell.
yeah, and so that's the that's the thing. So with a lot of these things, I'm not into big gimmicky things. I'm not into how somebody, I don't, just because somebody made a lot of money doesn't mean to me that they're very good at running a business, or can even increase your chances of being successful running a business, or know anything at all, frankly. A lot of times what happens is some business concepts, or some business takes off, and after that, it has enough money to hire some really good experts that they bring in. And those people really, really push the company to the next level. And so, just because a person had shares in a company and that company became successful, or just because they started a company and that company became successful, doesn't mean you can just sit there and historically just view everything they did and just go, okay, I'm going to duplicate that and it's going to work.
Right.
I don't find that to be effective,
Oh,
an effective
absolutely.
learning tool.
100%. So
It's
before
it's
we wrap
fun.
up,
Mhm.
I wanted to ask one thing. So if I'm an entrepreneur just getting started and I have a product, for example, what would be one piece of advice you would give this entrepreneur?
Well, figure out what problem you're solving. Uh, I mean, that's the first thing you have
I
to
love
do is,
it.
what
Yeah.
problem am I solving?
Yes.
And then from there, you go to all the other steps.
I love it. Well, Shawn, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, thank you for tuning in and stay tuned next week for another episode of Spark BizCast. Thanks for listening to the Spark BizCast. Join us again soon for our next episode, and don't forget to subscribe.